Hi, everybody. I would like you guys to be welcome to our Voices of Vietnam Global Eyewitness Exhibition of 2024. Hi, I'm Ariana Joy Cobbler. I'm currently a junior studying journalism and broadcasting here at the College of Journalism, which is where you guys are at. Um, to get started, we really just want to talk about our gratitude towards the College of Journalism for not only hosting us, but just allowing us to have this opportunity and have this huge experience as a group. Yeah.
And I'm Milena Donay. I'm a senior journalism major here at the college. We will both be emceeing tonight's event. We're excited to present the student work we all have been diligently working on for the past academic year. As many of you know, since you're sitting here, we've traveled to Vietnam for 3 weeks in January, where we gathered photos, video, audio, and insights on life in the Mekong Delta.
Please welcome Associate Dean for Academic Programs and Associate Professor Adam Wagler to the stage for a few words on behalf of the college.
Well, thank you everybody for coming. I should probably stand in front of the camera, so you're all right. Like Ariana said, my name is Adam Wagler. I'm Associate Dean for Academic Programs. I'm filling in for Dean Vale, who isn't able to join us, but she was super bummed that she couldn't be here, but she extends her warmest regards to the students for all the work that you've been doing throughout the year. But welcome again to the College of Journalism and Mass Communications. We really appreciate you spending some time with us this Friday night. I wanted to take a little bit of time just to talk a little bit about what the Global Eyewitness program is, where it's kind of progressed to, and where it's going. This is going to be super brief, so it's very high level. I'm happy to talk your ear off later, and I know Chris and Sean will as well. But the Global Eyewitness program it offers co-JMC students a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to travel internationally for a journalism project without paying for most of the travel expenses. Travel abroad can dramatically impact students' lives in a positive way, and it creates memories that do last a lifetime. If you've ever went abroad, it's something that you probably stick with you for the rest of your life or for a very long time. To be able to work on big projects like these with global partners highlights the connections we have with each other across the world. Alums from the program in the past have benefited from their participation in the program in many ways. They've built connections and relationships with people in other countries, received employment opportunities, enhanced their portfolios, supplemented tuition costs with money that's been awarded to them for work that they've gained with skills that they've gained through the program. Global Eyewitness actually has been around for quite a while. It began in 2008 through the endowment that Chris will talk a little bit more about. But it started with a trip to Kosovo, and it's went to multiple countries over the years, and it's continued up until the pandemic. So in 2020, I think we all want to try to forget, but we did live through a pandemic, but we also saw many social movements and social change in the United States. Black Lives Matter movement really shined a light on a lot of the injustices that have been, a long time happening in the United States. So it was during that time provided an opportunity for reflection because we weren't able to travel. We were able to reconnect with alumni that did express some frustration over the program, the stagnation of some of the things that virtually remained unchanged over the years, so nearly 15, 20 years. So we took an opportunity to reflect on the societal changes and the expectations for the program. And it was clear from the former students in the program that they cared deeply about the program. They had graduated, they'd moved on to successful careers, but they still were invested in the college. We thank them for helping us bring awareness to the college for the lack of the attention and the concerns that they expressed about the program over the years. But this kicked off a lot of rich discussions to reimagine the program, take some time since we weren't able to travel abroad to really integrate solutions journalism approaches that a lot of our new faculty brought to the table that provide a deep understanding of intersectionalities of cultures and communities. And there's been several updates to the program that will kind of continue throughout the years. That's what good curriculum does, is it continues to evolve as times change, especially in our industry. But there's been several updates. Most notably, we'll continue to return to locations. So we used to kind of bounce around to different places around the globe. This time around, we're going to be kind of returning to Vietnam for a few years to be able to build stronger ties to that culture and those communities. So Travel abroad, though, however, is a privilege, and it can be a lot, though, at the same time. It's all exciting, intense, stressful, it's enlightening, it's scary, but it's always eye-opening. And I think that's the big takeaway and the opportunity that students have. Big projects and travel abroad provide the best learning experiences. Ariana wanted me to talk a little bit about that. I had the opportunity to travel abroad, so I've been lucky to go many times to Europe and lead a group of students to Russia in the past. And in March, I was able to travel to Vietnam, so that was an area of the world I've never been to, and we got to go to Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi with the university doing some relationship building. But the people and the culture, the traditions, the food, the language, the voices, the sense of community, the traffic. I've never wanted a motorbike more in my life going there, but it is full of life, and it's a vibrant culture that has a ton of energy, and it's just really invigorating when you go there. But the college is proud of the efforts that the students put into this work. It's important projects that they were able to participate in, and we're grateful for Professor Sean Hill and Chris for taking on such an important challenge and program that's in our college. It's something that doesn't happen overnight. It takes many partners, more than I'll be able to list. I know Chris is going to try, but there's a lot of people that were involved to make it happen, both here and abroad, to bring these stories to life. I always tell my students that no effort is wasted. Experiences like these provide opportunities for all kinds of growth, academic, professional, and personal. It's a very unique opportunity that we have in the college, and I look forward to celebrating the student work tonight. So welcome again. Thanks for being here, and it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Chris Graves.
Adam. Hi, everybody. Normally I don't need a microphone, so this is going to be a little odd for me because normally I have a big booming voice. First of all, we just both, Professor Sean Hill, excuse me, and I would like to welcome all of you and thank you for, as Dean Wagler said, for sharing your Friday night with us, especially during the last week of classes here, which is stressful and tiring and exhausting and all those things. Probably how many of the students felt when we got back from Vietnam. Anyway, as Adam said, this is a culmination of a year-long course. The students studied for 16 weeks in a more classic sort of classroom atmosphere, whereas Adam discussed, we talked about trauma-informed reporting. We spent some time digging into solutions journalism, so not just, I always say that in the media, problems sort of scream, but solutions whisper, so those stories are a little harder to find and to tell. But we did. We found some of those, and the students are going to be able to showcase some of those stories this evening. We also talked a few weeks about checking our own bias and also the bias in media that we know is prevalent. I just was reading some of their feedback, and they have said that they found that pretty interesting and educational. So I just wanted to take a minute to let you know that your students, your children, your young adults are also learning in the classroom and applying these principles. We take great pride here in rolling up our sleeves and doing the work on the ground. But we also wanted to make sure to give them the tools as best as we could. You know, we don't have them all, but so when they got there. But anyway, I'm going to follow a script because you can see I go on little tangents, so I want to make sure. Ariana said I only had 5 minutes, for any of you who know me, no, that's not enough time. But so we traveled 8,500 miles away and a world away for many of our students. One student had never traveled abroad, and I know that was eye-opening for that student. It was the first trip abroad in this program since 2019. Professor Hill and my first travel with students, so I can tell you we learned an awful lot and continue to learn. But just as we tell students, you know, everything that you learn is good. I mean, even the tough stuff, the peaks and the valleys are necessary for growth. And I'm saying that for us as well. We learned an awful lot. And so I owe an eternal debt of gratitude to these students for teaching me to be a better professor. So thank you. Again, I'll just tell you, Ariana wanted me to speak a little bit about why we chose the area of Vietnam. And I'm just going to read this because it's long and involved. But the Mekong River, which nourishes one of the world's richest ecosystem, is under attack from nature and man. Some fear the move to industrialize southern Vietnam may also contribute to the destruction of the mighty river that has fed and sustained its people for centuries. Our students enrolled in the year-long multimedia course here at the college to study the history of Vietnam and the Mekong Delta region. They traveled to southern Vietnam for 3 weeks in January, and they developed a series of documentaries, long-form written articles, and photos to illustrate the challenges facing the region more than 5 decades after the American War with Vietnam raged that country. They discovered the Vietnamese have largely persevered, are thriving and adapted to countless challenges. Still, they face a looming crisis that is threatening and could forever alter that part of the world. So that's why we went. The College of Journalism thinks really big, right? We had really big expectations for these students to tell big stories with depth and richness. You will meet them all, you will see their work, but these are really their stories. There are 4 documentaries, 4 long-form text stories, and by long-form, I think, you know, there's somewhere around 2,500 words-ish, give or take. That's a lot of words. A 3-episode podcast and lots of photos, which you saw. I did want to take a moment to acknowledge that when you do big work like this, there's a lot of people involved. I mean, an army of people. And I know that people say that, but until you work on something like this, you have no idea. So if you will just give me a couple more seconds to thank people. Our translations, we would have been lost without the Asian Community Center here in Lincoln, Nebraska. Our on-the-ground partner, the Global Engagement Institute, Can Tho University in Can Tho City, Vietnam. And special thanks go to Thuy and Dang. You guys know them, right? All, yeah, we would have been lost without them. They were the ones who really showed us the way. Also the professors and students at Can Tho University in Vietnam, and to the people of Vietnam with whom this project would not have been possible. Also, we had industry professionals come in and give them feedback on their work, from internationally recognized photojournalists to people working in this market and in the state. Their feedback was valuable, and collectively, we believe, made the work better. Also, I would be remiss if I did not thank Dean Sherry Vale, Associate Dean Adam Wagler, Business Manager Haley Hamill. She handles all the money and things. Associate Professors of Practice, Casey Richter and Jill Martin, Equipment Checkout, Room Director Susan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's the one that provided the equipment to the students, and I don't think anything got broken. All right, no, that's good. No international incidents and no broken equipment, so that's good. No, we're not, yeah. Anyway, it is, and again, I would be remiss if I didn't say it is with deep, deep gratitude that we thank the Buffett Fund for generously providing the funding for this trip, and that alumni group of Global Eyewitness students who believed in us, this work, and ultimately the mission of this project. So without further ado, I think the students want to show you their work. There's lots of hours, so thank you very much again for attending.
So, as Chris said, each group collectively did a photo story, a written article, and a documentary. So, how this is really going to work is each group was paired up into either a visual person or someone who focuses more on the written aspect of journalism. And within each of the group, you do 3 separate projects, whether that might be a visual, and then we also have one specific student who wanted to showcase their audio expertise. So that is something that has never happened within the Global Eyewitness like years that they've been doing this project, which I think is pretty fun. Yeah, so throughout all of these multimedia projects, all the students have been able to collectively do research and curate interviews, and also the artistic abilities that students have done throughout this entire process have been very, very fun, and just seeing what these students have come up with. A lot of it was up to their own interpretation, which I thought was really cool. So yeah.
So just so you know what the night is going to look like a little bit, each group will have the article writer outline the process of creating their story and then share the corresponding photos that will show up on the digital story. Then the visual partner will share their photo essay and documentary, and each documentary is about 5 to 10 minutes long. Let's see. And then our lovely broadcasting student will share a clip from their podcast premiere. And then there's 4 regular groups, so we'll have about 5 presentations total. Yep. And there will be time for questions at the end of every presentation, so there will be a microphone right there, right behind the camera.
Without further ado, can we please give a hand of a round of applause sorry, to Kirk and Layla for their projects.
And my name is Kirk Rangel, and I'm a senior sports media major.
Perfect. So for the course of this year, Kirk and I have worked together in order to create a story explaining the Kairang floating market. For those of you who don't know what floating markets are, they're essentially a collection of boats and vendors who conduct business on the river. So there was a collection of, we had noodle restaurants being conducted on boats. We were seeing produce vendors. There was a wide variety of things being sold at these markets, and they are only accessible by boat and mainly located in the Mekong region. So it was a really important historical mainstay for people in order to access these boats during a time where pavement and roads didn't exist. So these floating markets have a huge historical significance within Vietnam, and we wanted to look into the biggest one in Vietnam, the Kairang floating market. So the Kairang floating market is, like I said, the current biggest floating market in Vietnam, and it currently has around 200 boats. And what's important to note about this is back in 2016, when numbers were recorded, there was around 500 boats, and it has significantly declined the past 8 years. And just looking into this, we were curious to figure out why this was happening. So Kirk and I really wanted to focus on figuring out the problems happening at the Kairang floating market and the solutions that vendors and other experts were looking into. So here at the floating market, these are a couple of shots that I took, and I just wanted to highlight just the way that the market works. It's mainly ran by tourists, so it's a huge tourist mainstay right now. It's one of the biggest attractions for tourists who visit southern Vietnam, and more specifically Can Tha. So it was just a huge, huge deal. And another aspect that we really wanted to hit on when looking into the floating markets was trying to elevate and highlight the voices of vendors. So most often, vendors are people who don't own anything besides their boats and what they sell, and they do this in order to make a living for their families. And most of the vendors, we spoke to over 10 vendors, and most are on record, or we have interviews with over 10 vendors, and the vendors that we spoke to really highlighted how the floating markets are more than just a business for them. It's a way of life, and it's a way of passing on tradition for their families and onto their children. And the industrialization that's happening in Vietnam, or that's happened the past decade, along with an increase in pollution and COVID, have caused the numbers of the floating markets to significantly dwindle. So this is an alarming issue for the overall culture of Vietnam because, like I said before, they are so important to the rich history of the people who have lived along these rivers for centuries. So yeah, that was just kind of what we wanted to highlight, and my story really focuses on the solutions that vendors offered as well. So a lot of the feedback that I was hearing from vendors was they wanted government intervention in order to have subsidies and grants passed in order to help them maintain or be able to, you know, afford a life on the water. There are so many things that people don't really think about when thinking of vendors who live on the floating markets, such as electricity, fresh, clean water, having, you know, sending your children to school. All of those things are things that vendors face and are issues that really haven't been addressed yet. So we really wanted to highlight those, and we were able to get some pretty good information on, you know, the steps that need to be taken in order to save the market.
Yep, and then so I was the visual side of the story, and so this is kind of my photo story, and so my photo story focuses on one specific vendor. This is Nhan. She is 30 years old, and she has a 4-year-old daughter, and so her and her daughter live with their husband on this boat, and so their boat's about 50 feet long, just like many other vendors in the market, and so her business is selling pineapple, as you can see in the top picture, selling it to tourists, and it's paired with a salt and spicy like salt mixture to go with the pineapple. And so Nhan has been working at the market for about 10 years, and she actually is trying to keep the tradition of the floating market alive. And so she has taken over after her grandparents and after her parents have worked there. And so a lot of her struggles is just trying to make enough money throughout the day, and so she only makes about $4 to $5 a day, and that's just trying to keep the business going and also trying to raise a family. And so here's a little bit more in-depth look of kind of what their boat looks like. So as you can see, there's not a lot that they own, but through it all, without having a ton of material possessions, her and many of the other vendors at the market just live happy lives. They're just happy to be there. Living on the boat is all that they know. And so having to give that up in the future would be very difficult for them, and trying to go onto land would be very difficult. So here's just a couple more photos. One specific thing that Nhan told us was that in the future, she just wants her kid, who's 4 years old, like I said, to grow up, go to school, get good education, and create a new path of life for herself. And she also kind of wants her daughter to also just continue to keep the boat. She wants it to be used just as a memory of just how the boat has provided a house for them and a way for them to make money. And then with that, we'll start my documentary. The documentary focuses on Nhan's story and also another man's story named Quoc, and really just kind of talking about why they're even at the market, some of the struggles that they have faced, and just kind of the future for their kids and their families.
History and tradition that is the Kai Rang floating market has survived for hundreds of years and is now dying. What once stretched a mile long is now a quarter mile. It's people going down with their ships.
Tại cái này là nói chung là nghề này cũng của ông bà, từ thời của ông bà, cha mẹ về tới đời mình. Cái thứ nhất nữa là chị cũng muốn duy trì cái phong tục của chợ nổi thôi. Chứ nếu như người ta thì có thể vợ chồng con cái ở cùng ôm nhau lên bờ hoặc đi công ty làm. Nhưng mà cái thứ nhất là nói chung là ai cũng muốn duy trì cuộc sống chợ nổi. Chứ nếu mà tụi chị không duy trì nữa thì chợ nổi này sẽ không còn.
Khác lắm, tại vì lúc mới hai chồng mới bán là chỉ cách đây như 12 năm về trước đó, là mình bán là khách đi đông lắm, mà ghe xuồng là đậu ở đây là khoảng nói chung ra là mình theo như mấy ngày này đó mình chạy cái tàu vô là đó đã vất vả rồi. Còn bây giờ với đó 10 bây giờ còn chỉ khoảng 2 phần thôi trong cái chợ đó. Giảm dữ lắm rồi, dần buôn bán trong vườn ra cũng giảm, khách du lịch cũng giảm.
Khách du lịch người nước ngoài á, người ta chủ yếu là gì, là người ta đến Việt Nam tìm những thứ mà ở bên Việt Nam có mà bên nước người ta không có, cho nên á, cái thứ nhất là gọi là cái tự nhiên và những cái gọi là cái xưa của ông bà đó, phong tục của người ta mà bây giờ anh thấy không còn cái gì nữa hết trơn. Chạy hai bên giờ em thấy là hai cái dắt xi măng rồi, còn có nhúm đây là ghe thôi, cũng đâu còn cái gì chạy vòng vòng cái gì, nên cái tâm ra người ta chán, ta đến một lần người ta không có gì vui nên người ta không có ấn tượng, rồi sẽ không đến nữa thôi.
Chắc nếu anh thấy từ đây trong tương lai chắc thể kinh doanh này không còn ổn đâu, tại vì bây giờ nói chung là du lịch bây giờ nó đi hạn chế lắm. Còn nếu mà bờ kè này đã làm kiểu mà đàng hoàng hoàn thành hết là chắc không còn du lịch nữa.
In response to major flooding in 2000 and 2011, dike construction began. Though the dikes have created progress in agriculture and slowing erosion, they have come with unseen impacts for those living on the river. With a lack of ports, vendors have been forced to create their own outlets of loading and unloading shipments for their business. The market continues to transition from a means of trade to tourism.
Cũng như lần mình buôn bán mình có tiền, mình có lời nhiều đó thì mình ăn rộng rãi. Rồi bây giờ cũng như bán cũng như nó không có lời, chiến lỗ thì nói vậy đi, ăn eo hẹp lại thì mình cũng gói gọn vậy đó thôi. Là nhiều ăn nhiều, lợi ích thì ít. Khó khăn hơn đó, đúng rồi.
Trời ơi. Rồi sáng giờ bán có 6 giờ bán có nhiêu mà. Rồi chú bán cái chấm mơ giờ có 25.000 bạc.
Còn gì nữa không? Còn gì nữa? Mấy năm về trước theo như hai chồng ra, nếu mà sáng chạy buổi sáng như mấy ngày này đó ha, là có thể hai chồng kiếm một buổi sáng khi 2-3 triệu cũng có đó. Tại vì mình khách đông á mà mình bán. Còn bây giờ những cái ngày mà như chủ nhật á thì mình kiếm 1-2 triệu thì có. Còn lời á, còn những ngày thường thì kiếm chừng vài 300.000, nhưng mà ở đây là chi phí nặng lắm. Đó, điện đài rồi wifi, gửi xe cũng tiền. Còn con đi học là tiền kia bằng là mỗi thứ tiền hết á. Ăn cũng phải tiền đó. Tích lũy những cái phần đó, chứ không phải có bữa nay được 1 triệu, mình ăn 800 là không có, ví dụ bữa nay 1 triệu mình sống được, ví dụ mình phải cho dư ra phần đó, mình nuôi con, nhưng mà cũng phải cho con ăn học đầy đủ.
Hơi cao, thì một ngày đi kiếm bình quân chỉ là cũng 100 mấy 200.000, ăn uống rồi nữa mà em phải trích ra tiền học ở ngoài là đóng cho nó là 80.000 một ngày, chứ tính tiền sữa tiền này nọ nữa. Nên hơi cao chị. Nếu mà chị được thì chị qua Tết chị cũng phải gán cho bé đi học. Tất nhiên cha mẹ nào không có đi con mình cuộc sống nó sáng lạng hơn. Nói chung chị cố đời chị với chồng vậy thôi, nhưng mà tương lai sau này chị không cho con chị giống như chị bâng bên vậy được. Bâng bên rất nguy hiểm. Tại vì chị vợ chồng cũng đang gán rồi trình dụm để mà cho con cái lên bờ. Hiện tại chị cũng có nhà dưới quê, nhưng mà để chị cũng gắng làm ít năm nữa để mà sửa sang lại cho con cái về quê nó học nè. Nhất nếu chị Truyền thì sau này chị cũng muốn cho con bé là cái thứ nhất là bé có kinh tế, là học hành kinh tế trên ổn định rồi, nhưng chị cũng muốn là không bao giờ bán cái ghe, để cái ghe gì để chi nếu mà chợ nổi không còn thì vẫn là một kỷ niệm, mà gọi là đây là cái nghề mà mẹ với cha đã kiếm tiền để nuôi con từ cái sông chợ nổi. Còn nếu mà chưa kiên, tức là tự quyết định của mấy bé chứ chị cũng không biết chuyện gì, Chị chỉ muốn là để lại cái ghe lại để làm một kỷ niệm thôi. Chị mong đó là chị mong là cái chợ nổi mình sẽ phát triển. Thì cái đó là chị mong thôi, còn nhưng mà thật sự chị nghĩ là chợ nổi sẽ không tồn tại.
We would like to thank our sponsor, the Buffett Fund, along with our partners in Vietnam, the Global Engagement Institute, along with Canton University, and finally, the Asian Community and Cultural Center in Macon, Nebraska.
All right. Hope you guys enjoyed. We're gonna open it up for some questions if you guys have any. There's a mic right here if you have a question. All right. We'll go on to the next one, and so please welcome up Sammy and Tristan.
Hello, my name is Tristan Summers. I am a junior journalism major here at the College of Journalism and Mass Communications. I also have minors in political science and criminology.
Hi, I'm Sammy Smith. I am a junior journalism major here at the college.
All right. Our story concerns an idea called community-based tourism. The idea of community-based tourism is very simple. For the locals, from the locals. The idea behind it, instead of a traditional tourism model, is that it can come from the locals themselves and benefit themselves directly, rather than it focusing more on a corporate style of approach. So me and Sammy decided to go and explore this concept a little more. We toured different communities and how they did tourism. On the top middle was a man we were very fortunate to interview. His name was Lee Von Bon. He liked to be called Uncle Babon. For short. He ran a fish farm in one of the rivers that connects into the Mekong, and he is a very big proponent of sustainable fishing. A very common problem that happens in this region of the world is overfishing, because fishing is such an important part of how people get their meals over there. It's important to make sure that it can sustain good fish populations. Unfortunately, overfishing makes food security in that part of the world not so secure. So he has huge fish farms. He has isolated nets where he can breed and control his own fish population, so that way he can try to make sure that the native fish can stay where they're at. And he wanted to bring tourism there as part of the community, and so he could show that to people. He can make money off of that, and also so that he himself could show people that come there what their community is like from their own perspectives. From the bottom here, we were fortunate enough to also go on the floating market tour. We were able to meet people who also sold fruit on the tour there. And we were able to talk to them a little bit. They were very similar to Kirk and Layla's story. They're very concerned themselves about what their lives look like. But they've tried this community tourism as well as to try to explain their problems and to try to reach out as well. And while it can't fully replace it, it does help them get their story out. Next slide. So these were some other pictures that we were fortunate to take. On the top left, this is a picture of somebody who was selling steamed dumplings from a riverboat at 5:30 in the morning. She has a lot more dedication than I do. On the bottom left, yes, it was a tourist we were able to interview themselves. And she had a very good insight on what it was like. She was from Australia. She had been over all parts of Asia. Her insight into what this type of tourism was very informative to what we were looking for, because she loved the fact that it came from the community themselves, that it came from, it came like more genuine. And that was kind of an overarching point of what community-based tourism is. It's more genuine, it helps support the people more directly, and it's just a great way to learn about a culture. So now I'll turn things over to Sammy to explain her photo story.
So yeah, like Tristan said, our story topic was community-based tourism. I decided to focus my story on one man and his farm. He likes to call himself Mr. Bean, which I just thought was adorable. But at his farm, he does everything by hand. He picks the beans by hand, he breaks them open by hand, roasts the beans, everything is by hand. They even individually wrap the chocolates, which I just think is so cool. So here's some pictures I got at his farm. And some more. I went to his farm 3 or 4, maybe 5 times, and each time he said the same joke, that he liked to keep things traditional because it brought the tourists in, and that's how he's able to support his family and keep farming. More pictures. And the chocolate there on the bottom left, that's straight out of the roaster, or those are the nibs. Super bitter, but it was so good. And here's my doc. It kind of just goes through the process of what he does to make his chocolate. Hope you like it.
Located in the forests of Kin Tao, Mui Ku lives on the first cocoa farm in Vietnam, where he makes chocolate by hand.
Chocolate. It's so good. It's just chocolate, so yeah, tasting was amazing.
Yeah, you can call me Mr. Bean, Mr. Cacao Bean. I'm a farmer. I plant the cocoa trees and making chocolate here, make all by hand. I will show you something about the farm and how make a chocolate.
The cocoa plants originated from Malaysia in 1960 when his father brought back a cocoa plant and planted it at their family farm.
Well, after harvest, I use the stick like this to break the fruit. Open it. Yeah. They are the beans. There are about 20 to 40 beans in one fruit. You see the white cup of the bean, the buff. If you like, you take the whole bean and you eat the white, same mango, same lychee. Yeah. And next step, I put the bean in the box like this. I put the bean in here, put bean here. Banana leaf on the top, close. And ferment the bean, ferment. Fermentation is a very, very important step to make a chocolate. If you want to make a good chocolate, you have to ferment the beans. If you don't, you cannot make a good chocolate. Very important step. After 7 days, open the bucket, use alcohol and cold, and take the bean out, use the sun. Dry them about 7 days, 8 days with a good sunshine. Yeah. If raining, I have to dry them 10 days, 11 days or more. Well, now I show you how to make chocolate by hand. If I want to make a chocolate first, I roast the bean. This is the roaster. I keep it here. I make the traditional for your looking, for the tourist looking, traditional. And I put inside here 20 kilo for one time. Close. Make a firewood below and turn by hand. 45 minutes to 1 hour. After 1 hour, you smell chocolate. Open it, take some, look and smell. With my experience, I know that okay. This is the grinder. Next step, I close the gap. I tighten this one, close the gap. Put the nib in. Start the motor. And do this. Just a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and the chocolate come out on the side, liquid chocolate, liquid chocolate. you know water, but do you know how come the chocolate come out liquid? Because inside the nib there are about 40% cocoa butter inside. Well, this is the cacao liquid, 100% cacao. It's a bitter, very strong. This is the organic product, very clean and safety, no chemical. Well, now I show you how to make the cocoa butter and the cocoa powder. This is the cylinder with many small holes around here. This is the piston. This is the bath for filter. And cacao liquid, make it hot about 50 to 60 degrees centigrade. And I put the hot cacao liquid in the bath, 3 kilo for one bath, put here. And I put the whole bath inside the cylinder. Piston in. You hydraulic jack, set big thing here, and you bump the jack, pump. Press down, slowly. And the cocoa butter come out here. They come out from small holes. When the cocoa butter coming out, it's a liquid yellow, look like olive oil. I use this box to hold it. This is the cocoa butter. From this, I separate, make the powder and the butter. 3 kilo this, I make a 2 kilo powder and 1 kilo butter.
Tourists can visit the Muikong Cocoa Farm year-round to learn about the traditional processes in making chocolate and even try some.
Well, a lot of work, but not hard, step by step. I like it. Thank you for visiting Vietnam. Thank you for visiting here. And now, một, hai, ba, yo!
The University of Nebraska-Lincoln College of Journalism and Mass Communications Production. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Buffett Fund,
along with our partners in Vietnam, the Global Engagement Institute, along with Can Thao University, and finally, the Asian Community and Cultural Center in Lincoln, Nebraska.
All right, thank you so much. Oh, there is a question, sorry.
I'll use this microphone. I think the process of making chocolate is really interesting, but since you are doing this from an ecosystem perspective and you were exploring the Mekong Delta, what impact does cacao, since it's not a native plant to the region, have on the Delta?
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much. I would like to turn it over to our next presenters, which I believe is Mari.
All right, so I'm Mari Pilling. I'm a senior broadcasting student here, graduating in a week. And you guys are going to kind of get sick and tired of my voice over and over again because I am the audio person. So I will bring it over here. There we go. Okay, so I am the special student here at the program who decided to do the audio piece. And I was very fortunate enough to go with all of the groups
for every single project that they did. So for Layla and Kirk, I got to visit the floating markets, and I got to visit and see how environmentalism was impacted there at the floating markets. And then I also got to visit the chocolate farm with Sammy and Tristan. That was really fun, again, seeing the environmentalism there. So my project, like I said, is a podcast, but I mainly focused on the Mekong Delta, the crisis, the solution, and the future of the Mekong Delta. As you could hear throughout the theme for today, there's a huge environmental change in the Mekong Delta, and there's a huge pollution problem. And like I said, my podcast focuses on not only the crisis, but the solutions and the future for Vietnam and the Mekong Delta. Like I said, so my main subject was Dr. Thien. And another group who will speak after me also interviewed Dr. Thien. He is an ecologist. He is no longer employed. He is retired now. But you will hear in my project that he calls himself the Delta Boy. And that is a monogram. He calls himself, proudly calls himself the Delta Boy. And if the QR codes are up here, if you wanted to have access to all three of my episodes are on streaming platforms like Spotify, so it's there. And I will show you now the first 6 minutes of my first episode. And this has to do with the crisis of the Mekong Delta.
Because we are all connected. Whatever happens in the Mekong will affect everybody around the world. The rhythm of life, the ecology, the way of life, the culture, and now supporting life.
Sediment is carried by the river, gradually accumulating at its mouth, creating a network of branching waterways and channels, creating a dynamic landscape consistently shifting and evolving due to the forces of water flow, erosion, and deposition, forming a delta. Today's deltas are home to 500 million people, from Vietnam to Mississippi and Bangladesh to Europe, helping provide ecological and agricultural security. I'm Mari Pilling, and you're listening to episode 1 of The Dying Dragons, The Crisis. In the delta of Vietnam, the Mekong River is the 12th largest river in the world. Over 2,700 miles long, it starts in upper southeast China, picking up sediment as it flows down through Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia, then emptying out into the South China Sea in southern Vietnam.
The delta is a product of the transportation and deposition of sediment by the mighty Mekong River in the past 6,000 years.
According to the research journal from Scientific Reports, states that the Mekong River provides 50% of food production for the 98 million people of Vietnam. 18 million people in Vietnam rely on the Mekong every day, from fishing to selling fruits on the market to brushing teeth and washing clothes. But supporting all of those people and all of those activities causes problems like water pollution, and garbage dumping has turned the Mekong into one of the top 10 most polluted rivers in the world, according to Prachi Patel of Scientific America.
My name is Thien. Currently, I'm a freelancing expert on delta ecology. I'm also known as the Delta Boy.
Dr. Thien, an ecologist who was raised on the river, reveals what it was like to grow up in a small rural village in South Vietnam.
When I was young, about 40 years ago, we used to have everything we needed. As a boy, after school, I would jump right into the river like this and catch fish with simple gears, even with bare hands. Fish was so abundant in the past. In the past, we could even drink from the river. In Vietnam, the Mekong River is known as the Nine Dragon. The Cửu Long, Cửu is 9, Long is dragon, because the Mekong River divides into 9 mouths, 9 branches before pouring into the sea, except the mainstream. The rest, many small outlets, are blocked now. So the inland canals and rivers no longer communicate with the sea, with the tidal water, so they're standing still. And non-flowing rivers shouldn't be called rivers anymore.
Known as the Nine Dragons, the Mekong's complex network of branches has shaped the lives of those who call its banks home. The Nine Dragons River has a distinctive pattern with 2 primary streams, the Tien Giang and the Hao Giang. The river further divides into hundreds of numerous channels, accumulating additional sediment along its course before ultimately emptying into the Eastern Sea through 9 distinct streams. This intricate river network led their Vietnamese ancestors to name the delta Q Long, meaning 9 dragons, when they explored the southern region. The 9 Dragons River was noted to have 9 distinct river mouths, arranging from north to south. However, this rapidly shrinking landscape reveals that these dragons are not as steadfast as they once were, and in 200 years, many experts believe that the delta will vanish. Can Thao City, about 3.5 hours south of Ho Chi Minh City, a bustling marketplace sits at the heart of this dynamic region. The floating markets, like the Kiai Rang, is where the river becomes a stage for trade and life. Here, the Mekong's fertile lands produce rice, fish, and fruits, like pineapples, sustaining countless of families who display their harvests at the markets for sale, mostly to tourists.
Yeah, that's why I'm afraid, you know. For example, when it rains at night and the wind blows, being on a boat scares me, especially since I have kids on the boat. It is less scary if we are on land. If something happens, it is very devastating. I think everyone will live on land if they have a choice. We still sell products here and have a living space here to stay if we need to. However, at the end of the day, having a house on land to go back to when we have time is better. Most people who live on boats are either people who don't have land, or if they do, their land is too far away to travel every day to sell.
The balance is precarious. The river, once a source of life, now faces threats from industrial pollution and climate change, according to the Fulbright University of Vietnam. The ecosystem is strained, affecting the livelihoods of those who rely on its bounty. The delta is a low-lying coastal region, and many provinces will be flooded by the year 2030. Salt intrusion into the freshwater river, rising sea levels, land subsidies, sand mining, upstream damming, and saline intrusion have all been contributed to the environment's rapidly declining health. The river Rach Sao is one of the last free-flowing channels connected to the dragons. Still breathing for the communities along its banks, this evolution brings hope and anxiety for the future.
The canal we are on now is one of the last remaining typical landscape of the delta of the old days. Now it's rare to find. With natural vegetation and quiet like this, very valuable remaining remnant of what was before. The delta was very much a pristine area before, with a dense network of canals and natural canals and rivers, and it was open to the sea.
As we trace the historical map from 1910, we witness the evolution of the 9 dragons. Some of the mouths are disappearing. Silt settles, and the once mighty river undergoes a transformation. The dragons are on the move, leaving us to question the sustainability of this vital lifeline.
So like I said, I was very fortunate enough to be exposed to not just one group, but many groups. And working with the audio project was very, very different compared to what other students have to do. So question, yeah.
I know that you have also approached this through a solutions journalism lens, and you mentioned like pollution and people like throwing trash in the river. What kind of solutions did you find while you were working on this project?
Well, if you want to find out, there's a whole episode on it. Like I said here, I can actually maybe go back here if you want to get the QR code for my episode. Like I said, there are 3 episodes, so you won't get bored.
First of all, I'm so proud of my best friend for making such a beautiful and informative project.
Stop.
I'm curious, I kind of have 2 questions. I'm curious, how did you get the artwork for your podcast?
Yeah, so I made this, but the story of the dragon is actually very, very interesting. So this is the Vietnamese dragon. I actually have a necklace of it. So I was exposed to this because one of our translators, our student translator from the university in Vietnam, was wearing this across her neck, and I complimented it and I said I loved it, and she stopped and she goes, well, do you want me to tell you the story of it? So she tells me the story that this is the traditional Vietnamese dragon, and so yeah, that's
somehow I wanted to put it on there since it was very special. And it's specifically the water dragon, so specifically for the river.
That's really cool.
Mhm.
So I bet you, oh, I know, that being on your own doing this project definitely had its challenges, but what I'm curious is that how did being on your own strengthen you as a storyteller?
That's a very good question. So like Amber said, I really had to rely on myself for all of it. So a big thing that what Chris and Sean said during the entire class before we even went to Vietnam was you can't go back. You have to, make sure you get everything, make sure you get as much, video, photo, audio. So I went crazy with the audio running around. I bet some people and the students can attest. There's multiple pictures of me running around with my audio like this. So yeah, so I really had to rely on myself, and I really had to, if I didn't get something, that was on me. So, and additionally to that, I had a lot of time to actually spend with the groups. So, exposed to the floating markets, the chocolate and everything, I got a more well-rounded approach, and it actually made making it a lot easier because I can, even though I was by myself, I could ask people in a class, be like, did you also get this? Did you also get that? Like, what was your perspective on this? So it was nice to work alone, but at the same time, it was really nice to kind of pick apart in all of the groups, not just by myself. But yeah, thank you. Oh, there you go. So yeah, now I would like to introduce Nandini and Ariana.
Hi again. Okay, so Nandini and I had a very interesting time in Vietnam, mostly because we had the task of trying to get this broad topic. Our initial topic going to Vietnam was essentially the whole entire southern Vietnam. So going into it, we thought we had a plan. We knew that we wanted to talk to some locals and try to see what their perspective of the place that they were going into. And we quickly realized that we went in a little bit too ambitious. And so we really wanted to focus in on how modernization is affecting both the young and the old within the south of Vietnam. And so that's where my story comes into play. As you can see, the title of this piece is The Price of Progress. And within my piece, I really just wanted to focus in on the age diversity that's within South Vietnam. So within my story, I talked to a couple of people. Over here in the middle is Lê Thé, and she is a 75-year-old grandmother who we stumbled upon accidentally, by pure accident. We were at a museum and we were taking B-roll and camera photos for our story, and we popped into a coffee shop next door, and we had a very lovely translator at the time who was one of the only times we had a professional translator with us during the 2 weeks. So we wanted to utilize them, and so we went up to this family, and we found out that not only was she 75, but she also grew up in South Vietnam. She remembered, which remembering is a very important part because we did not know what happened back when she was so young, but she remembered what it looked like during the war and how that happened. Over here is Mr. Tan, and he is actually the focus of Nandini's documentary. But we also stumbled upon him accidentally, which I find also funny. But he actually was one of our boat drivers when we were actually doing a different interview. And then up at the top is Nang V, who we stumbled upon during one of our outings to Can Tho University, where we had an in-depth class with one of the engineering department, who also was greatly impacted by the modernization, industrialization within South Vietnam. So within my story, I tried to get as many perspectives on different age ranges and how environment is being impacted, how like culture shifting is impacting this area. And then these are more photos. Up here at the top is Nung Vi, who I was just talking about, but this is actually during that session where we were talking with the engineering department. They were talking about how in Vietnam, they completely skipped an entire generation of industrialization compared to the rest of the world, which I found very fascinating because not only did they have to catch up to the rest of the world because they were already set back by the war that happened, they were doing it so rapidly to the point where they had to forget all these traditional aspects to get to the point where they are now. Here on the very top right is Dr. Tien, who we just listened to, so now you can put a face to the voice. But we also talked to him. This is the person we were interviewing on that boat when we had met Mr. Tan, who is the focus of Nandidi's documentary.
So I'm Nandini Rini-Kindi. I am a broadcast journalism and PR double major, a junior. And yeah, so for my documentary, I focus more about the evolution of the river in the Mekong Delta. I focused on, like Ariana said, Mr. Tan and his relationship with the river. We talk about how he's always grown up with the river and how now he is trying to make his living off of it, even though it's slowly dying. And I also have Dr. Thien as my subject as well, as you heard from Mari. But for my photo story, I decided to do a day in the life of Mr. Tan. And I spent the whole day with him. I woke up around 3 in the morning to then visit his house at 4 a.m. where he got ready for the day, where he would then get his boat ready to go to the Rak Sao River to pick up his tourists. And something that that kind of stuck with me when I was talking with him was how he just found joy in just the simplicity of life. But yeah. And then here's some more photos. This is kind of more of his neighborhood. One thing he loves to do after work is just sit down and have a nice coffee. It was a small little coffee shop that was just under this little bridge, and I just thought that was really sweet and cool. And he always ends his day with doing chores around the house and spending time with his family. And here's my documentary.
Hiện tại thì sáng thì 4 giờ anh thức, 4 giờ sáng anh thức thì anh chuẩn bị đồ đạc đâu đó xong cũng tầm xuống tới ghe luôn, chạy đò là 4 giờ rưỡi. Thì trên đường đi anh đi vô tới homestay là cũng tầm 5 giờ rưỡi tới 6 giờ. 6 giờ là khách bắt đầu xuống ghe là anh xuất hành anh đi. Thì chở khách đi ra tham quan chợ nổi. Ra chợ nổi thì mình ra đó mình ăn sáng với khách, cho khách ăn sáng với uống cà phê. Rồi xong chạy một vòng tham quan hết chợ nổi. Cái đó là tour đó là xong, thì anh về thì tầm cũng khoảng 10 rưỡi 11 giờ kết thúc một ngày đó là anh chạy về nhà. Nếu nhà trọ có việc làm tu bổ là sửa chữa hay là cái gì đó thì có thì việc có là sửa chữa thì anh làm, còn không có thì thôi, anh cũng ngày đó là xong. Thấy cũng thoải mái, bởi vì mình chở khách đi du lịch thì nó có niềm vui hơn, vừa có thu nhập mà vừa có niềm vui. Tương đối là cũng không phải là cao cấp gì, nó cũng dạng chung vừa.
In the south of Vietnam is the Mekong River Delta, one of the largest river deltas in the world, with 5.5 million hectares of land. It is roughly the same size as 215 Lincoln, Nebraskas. The part of the delta in Vietnam is the last stop before entering the South China Sea and has a human population of nearly 20 million. Making it one of the most populated rural areas in the world. This area covers a relatively small portion of the entire country. However, the World Wildlife Fund says the region represents about 1/5 of the total population and 1/4 of the gross domestic product of Vietnam. This being said, the rapid economic development during the past decades have resulted in wetland loss. The rivers are crucial in transportation, trading, and many rely on them for livelihood. Now with the rise of larger cities, pollution, and riverbank damage, this way of life is now being tested.
Phát triển cái kiểu là nó không có như là cái người dân sống á, tuổi trẻ nó lớn lên mà nó có trình độ nó làm, coi như là làm bằng trí óc, hoạt động bằng trí óc với tay chân, không có còn làm mà lao động như cái tuổi già như anh ngày xưa không. Làm nặng nhọc nó phải có mồ hôi mới có tiền. Còn bây giờ thì phát triển, giờ tuổi trẻ làm nó rất là coi như là con người nó thay đổi mọi mặt, nhìn rất là đẹp. Người giờ đi ra đường nhìn thấy đó, rồi đủ tiện nghi hết trơn, xe này nọ các thứ đi, rồi nhà cũng cao tầng cũng mọc lên nó. Con sông thì rất là quan trọng cho cái người, cho mình và kể cả của người dân miền Tây. Giống như anh đang chạy ghe thì cũng nhờ con sông, nó cũng có thu nhập kinh tế cho gia đình. Ảnh hưởng về mặt.
Just 6 decades ago, the American-Vietnam War left this area permanently battle-scarred, yet now an explosive economic boom is bringing more people. Those who grew up before and during the American War with Vietnam have bore witness to the changes in the lush landscape, which was previously fertile agricultural land. There have been 2 generations of people after the end of the war, but many families still remember what the Delta looked like when they migrated to the south. The war type still affects the landscape of the Mekong Delta, but the transformation of South Vietnam is fueled by the momentum of post-war development and has redefined its identity. The building of concrete dikes used to stop erosion and the rapid building of roads and bridges are forever altering this land. Nguyen Thien, a Delta boy, which is what locals call the native eco-activists and freelance ecologists in the region, is a direct witness to the environmental neglect unfolding. In his lifetime, he has seen the Mekong Delta go from lush and abundant to hyper-industrialized.
When I was young, about 40 years ago, we used to have everything we needed. As a child, as a boy, after school, I would jump right into the river like this. In the past, we could even drink from the river. Now, it's being deprived of the very material, so the delta will disappear on the map physically. And I cannot imagine Vietnam to exist without the delta in the future.
Nhỏ thì anh tuổi thơ thì cũng có nhiều cái kỷ niệm. Thì hồi xưa là sau năm 75 rồi á, là giống như là có mấy chiếc tàu mà giống như là hồi thời mà chiến tranh đó. Rồi sau này là tới là thời hòa bình rồi, mấy chiếc tàu đó cũng còn đậu, cũng còn dạng nó chìm neo đậu dưới đó đó. Thì tàu nó có lỗ tròn chui vô, giống như nó dài gì cách khoảng chừng mấy mét có cái lỗ, cách mấy mét có cái lỗ.
So now the delta is facing a multi-dimensional crisis, and the government of Vietnam has developed a very good policy framework, and it takes time to implement. It's not easy. It won't happen in 1 or 2 days. It takes years, but I'm an optimistic.
Phán đoán cái đó thì anh cũng chưa có phán nổi, nhưng mà anh thấy thật sự Cần Thơ sau này phát triển
càng mạnh hơn nữa. Không có vấn đề gì trở ngại đâu.
A University of Nebraska-Lincoln College of Journalism and Mass Communications production. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Buffett Fund, along with our partners in Vietnam, the Global Engagement Institute.
No? Oh, okay, yes, never mind.
This is a quiet group, but I have a lot of questions.
That's okay.
Yeah, so this summer I'm going to Namibia, and I know that Namibia also had a similar situation with the war, and one way that they've navigated out of that is a lot of ecotourism. So has part of the solution element of this been like looking into ecotourism?
I would say so. Mr. Tan, in the documentary, he actually is a freelance tour guide. So as part of, he's basically a pawn and part of the entirety of what ecotourism is starting to become in Vietnam. It's become it's very low scale currently, and it's very like local, and it's based off of who you know and what you can bring to the table. I thought it was kind of funny. I didn't realize this until after I had watched all the documentaries and seen everyone's story, but our Mr. Tan, which is the person in our documentary, the boat driver, he actually, we have archived footage of him saying his route of where he brings the tour guide, or brings the tourists, and he said every single one within all of our stories, and within among all of us, they had no connection to Mr. Tan. So I feel like a lot of people don't realize how small the Mekong Delta is and relative to the community. But within the community, they all know each other, and that's how ecotourism is such a booming industry. Nandini, do you have anything to add about that? But yeah, it's mostly just who you know and being able to talk to each other and say that this particular hotel has people who want you to bring these people to this specific place. So it's really just on who you know and what you can bring to the table, and that's how ecotourism is booming in South Vietnam. Oh, okay. Yes, thank you.
I know you got a booming voice. It's all right.
Who's this man?
Are you going to have the opportunity to go back and do some more reporting as a group?
As a group,
or individually?
I mean, personally, I think I will be returning at some point. I don't know. As a group, we will, because that's a lot of money and a lot of time and effort. But I do want to go back, and I know a lot of us have talked to each other that we are planning on going back to either Vietnam in general or South Vietnam or Asia, and just seeing what we can report on.
So there will be some other students of ours that will then have a chance to go back to Vietnam, right?
Yes.
So here's my question. I guess my overarching question is what would you tell those students based on what you experienced and what you have learned from your experience there? What advice would you give them?
I think my advice would be to just keep saying yes. Most of the people that Nandini and I had the chance to even talk to and express what we were doing and the projects that we were kind of curating were completely by chance. All of the people that ended up being part of my story, yes, we kind of had some connection to, but we didn't know how big they were going to be a part of our stories, and telling their stories is so important. Especially like the person, Mr. Tan, the person in the documentary, he was completely by chance. I had taken a photo of him and asked him for his information, and I saw his reaction. He was very happy and very enthusiastic about just seeing us. Within that time, when we were interviewing Dr. T and the Delta boy, I snapped a photo of him, and he was actually on the cell phone on FaceTime with one of his sons, and he was just in awe by us interviewing and taking all these photos. So at first, I was very hesitant to go up to people and talk to people about what they were doing there and how they were as a group and how we could tell their stories better, just because most of the stories in Vietnam have been very surface level and no one really knows how these people live other than the war. And after that, people have kind of just dropped off and said, okay, there's nothing really else to say, but there is stories to be told.
Yeah, I would say my piece of advice is I feel like for us, we had to pivot a lot. But with that, it definitely helped us to keep enduring and helped us to keep going up to talk to people. Kind of the same thing you were saying. Like, I was very hesitant to go up and just talk to people, but everyone was so kind. Everyone wanted to help. So just not being afraid to talk to people, ask questions.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Hi again, everyone. I'm back. Again, I'm Milena, a senior journalism major from here in Lincoln.
And I'm Lauren, a senior journalism and political science double major, originally from the Denver area in Colorado.
So our projects, and my project in particular, focused on Abivina, and it's about one woman's vision to cultivate sustainable agriculture and community in her little corner of the world in the Mekong Delta. So her farm is just 20 miles west of Kanta City, which is where we were staying. Here you will see Twa Win, the 37-year-old intelligent, bubbly, 5'2", very welcoming woman, as you can see from her smile there. So when you think of a farm, you kind of have one idea from maybe what you've seen here in the States or here in Nebraska. Abivina is a company and a business, but the purpose of it isn't necessarily to make money. So Ms. Twa here saw a disparity between the richness of resources in the Mekong Delta, but then the lack of prosperity among farmers. And then coupled with the environmental damage that she saw in her corner of the world, she decided to make a change. So she works to build efficiency and self-sufficiency in the community. She teaches farmers how to create natural fertilizers, which is what is here in these lovely blue barrels. She uses an outdoor classroom, and then she also cultivates fertilizers and pesticides and creates a network of farmers, customers, and vendors. Go to the next one. All right, so she puts it best in her own words. She says, Abivina's mission is to thrive for a community in which all people have a life of mastery and harmony with nature. So one thing that stood out to me is that her work and her home life are completely intertwined. So that main building on the top left there, on the left with the stools, is where we were most of the time. If you go back to the previous slide really quick. So she lives, nope, sorry, forward. All right, so she lives, oh yeah, so that back wall in the doorway there, she lives in a one-room building that is much smaller than the auditorium that we're in here. Her farm is quite literally in her backyard. This doorway here in the bottom left is sort of her kitchen and bathroom area, and right out there is the outdoor classroom, the fertilizer. She, most mornings, would have some laundry drying out there, so everything is intertwined. In my story, I described it as live at home and live at work and work at home, I think. So one of my biggest takeaways from visiting the farm for several consecutive days was the difference between Abivina and the farms that I was used to seeing here in the States. So I had preconceived notions about what a farm looked like, tons of machinery, neat rows of crops, chemical pesticides, and then fertilizers being sprayed. I left all of that at the door. I also left my shoes at the door because most people on the farm are working in sandals or are barefoot. So this is what the farm looks like. This is it. There's no like wide open fields. It's a jungle. You can see some guava growing with a little mesh pesticide deterrent there. And then up top you'll see a workshop, which you'll see a little bit more of in the documentary, of her teaching just one farmer a little bit more about what it would look like to use natural resources. So now I'll hand it over to Lauren, where you will learn about this man right here in the picture.
Yeah, hello again. I'm Lauren Pennington, and then this is Fook Lee. So he is the production manager at Abavina, and for the photo story and documentary, we kind of soloed in on him to tell a little bit more of the why of Abavina. So Fook is 22, and he has been interested in agriculture from a very young age. He has wanted to pursue sustainable, agriculture and organic farming practices ever since he saw the effect that chemical pesticides and fertilizers were having on his father's health as he was working on the farm, and implementing those practices hasn't been an option because his father's the only one working on the farm, so they haven't had the manpower to shift into that sustainable era. But currently he's working at Abavina to learn more about how to formulate these different organic pesticides that are unique to each plant and crop and bring that back to his family farm. So we spent time with them. All of these photos that are in the photo story, at least these 4 right here, are from their family farm, which is also in the Kantau province, but a bit further out of the city, about an hour out. So we had the opportunity to meet his father, who has inspired him to go on this sustainable journey, and talk to his family about it as well. So yeah, a little bit more of the workshop, and then you'll learn about it in the documentary, but how he's partnered with Abavina to begin experimenting. So the IMO4 is an organic component that he uses to make his own versions of these fertilizers and pesticides and begin implementing them on his farm. We also had the opportunity to go to a different province, which is this down here, and watch as Twa, Melena's main source, and Fook interacted with people at this organic farming conference and took in new techniques and also brought their own to share with these other organic farms in the region. So yeah, there's some more photos.
Gia đình em cũng là nghề nông, và lúc đó em mong muốn là em sẽ học ngành nông học, nhưng mà lúc đó gia đình em lại không cho phép, bởi vì cha em bảo là cha em đã làm nông để nuôi em rồi, thì đến sau khi ra trường thì lại làm nông nghiệp nữa hay sao. Thì đó chia sẻ thêm là với như cha em cũng có một cái sự mâu thuẫn trong cái suy nghĩ của mình. Ví dụ là cha em muốn em đi ra bên ngoài để phát triển, vì thương em á, cho nên là mong muốn em đi ra ngoài phát triển hơn là ở nhà. Nhưng mà thật sự thì cha em rất là vui khi mà em ở nhà làm phụ cha, làm vườn phụ cha, thì cha rất là vui, cha hạnh phúc. Nhưng mà cha lại giống như là lại bỏ qua cái đó để mà mong muốn cho em phát triển hơn, không có cần quá nặng về gánh nặng về cha. Có lẽ là một cái khoảnh khắc mà lúc mà hồi năm nhất đại học thì em hay về vườn, về nhà đi làm với cha, tức là em học một khoảng thời gian rồi, khoảng thời gian sau thứ sáu, thứ bảy, chủ nhật thì về nhà làm với cha, thì cha cũng có tâm sự, cũng có trao đổi với em nhé. Và cha cũng thể hiện cái mong muốn là cha sẽ giống như là đứa nào mần được ruộng thì cha sẽ đưa về cho mần á. Thì lúc đó em suy nghĩ là nếu mà vậy thì mình làm thì mình sẽ làm theo cái hướng mà mình mong muốn như vậy. Có một cái vấn đề trong đó là em thấy cha em khi mà canh tác nông nghiệp thì xịt thuốc rất là nhiều, và nó ảnh hưởng rất là nhiều đến sức khỏe của cha.
Đúng rồi, nó thích rồi. Rất là nhỏ, lúc nó biết những cái người ta xịt thuốc, xịt đồ đó là nó đang đi học, nó con mà là con thành đạt rồi, không có do xịt thuốc này. Cái mộng nó vậy đó. Khi mình xịt thuốc rồi á, về ngủ là tối nó nóng con mắt đỏ là hưng luôn.
Nghĩa là khi mình đi về thì nó chưa có liền.
Tối mới có, nó nóng lên, nó nằm mình khó chịu, nó gần nhức đầu.
Khoảng bao nhiêu lâu?
Nó cũng qua bữa sau mấy bữa nó mới hết rồi. Mấy bữa luôn hết luôn á. Uống nước dừa đầu tiên giả thuốc rồi mà.
Và lúc đó em rất là mong muốn mình có thể làm nông nghiệp mà mình không sử dụng cái hóa chất trong quá trình canh tác. Cảm hứng thì thứ nhất là về cái hướng đi á, cái tầm nhìn, cái hướng đi và cái sứ mệnh mà Abavina nó trùng khớp với cái mong muốn bên trong.
Slogan của Abavina là tự nhiên là bạn, bạn là tự nhiên. Và cái câu mà phát biểu tầm nhìn của Abavina là Abavina mong muốn đóng góp tạo nên một cái xã hội nơi mà mọi người dân đều có một cái đời sống làm chủ và hài hòa cùng với tự nhiên. Và quan trọng là Abavina đã làm phát triển cộng đồng bằng cách là đồng hành rất là sâu trong cái câu chuyện làm sinh kế cùng với nông hộ tham gia với mình. Từ cái lúc mà họ bắt đầu tới đề nghị hợp tác với mình, đến cái lúc mà họ cùng sản xuất với mình và đến lúc mà họ phát triển sản phẩm cùng với mình và phát triển cái thị trường cùng với mình. Nghĩa là nó một cái tiến trình làm kinh tế hợp tác rất là sâu.
Hiện tại là tại vì em vào Abavina được 6 tháng thôi thì em biết công thức đó rồi, em còn 3 tháng thì em ủ thời gian đó đến bây giờ là thì mới sử dụng được, và em sử dụng em đang tưới cho những cái cây đu đủ, mấy cây phía trước nhà.
Cái lý do thứ hai đó là cái lý do liên quan tới bảo vệ môi trường. Mình thấy là môi trường của miền Tây thì nó trù phú thiệt nhưng mà nó rất là nhiều nguy cơ để ô nhiễm và những cái thích ứng của nó chưa ổn. Cho nên là mình thấy cái giải pháp mà mình theo về nông nghiệp bền vững nó rất là phù hợp trong cái bối cảnh bảo vệ môi trường của miền Tây.
Thứ nhất là vì sức khỏe của ba em và gia đình em là nó quan trọng với em. Tại vì nó không đơn giản là làm nông nghiệp mà nó là liên quan tới cái lối sống và cái sức khỏe.
A University of Nebraska-Lincoln College of Journalism and Mass Communications production. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Buffett Fund, along with our partners in Vietnam, the Global Engagement Institute, along with Can Thao University, and finally, the Asian Community and Cultural Center.
So can you tell me a little bit more about how the teams work together for, like for the documentary? You know, Lauren, did you take all the video and the photos, or was that a collaboration between the two? Did you take some, Elena take some, and then you kind of share, or did every team work it a little bit differently? Just wondering how that teamwork kind of worked.
So we both went in, we had the same topic, but we were challenged to take a different angle on that topic. So we knew that Ms. Twa was going to be a source. Okay, I'm not loud enough, I guess. Thank you. Okay, so we were challenged to find a different angle. So we both knew that Ms. Twa was going to be one of our sources, and she was the main source and character and voice of my story. So Lauren's challenge was to find another person to tell her story, her side of the story. So we just happened upon Fook one day. It was a day that Lauren wasn't there, I believe, but we found her and then they connected later, or we found him and they connected later. But we just asked if we could speak to him a little bit because he worked there. So we asked him a little bit about his position and what he did there on the farm. We started asking him, well, what made you want to come here? Like, this is a very out of this world thing. You graduated with a degree in business. What made you want to come here? He started talking about his dad and how he wanted to take over the farm and how he said, my dad does not want me to do this, but I'm here so that I can show him that there's a different way than having red eyes and a fever every night when you go to bed. I'll let you add some more since he's yours first.
So I believe you were asking about content creation as well, right? Yeah.
Kind of how that teamwork.
Sure. So Yeah, it's definitely different for every team. Specifically in here, there are, I believe, like 1 or 2 B-roll clips that I borrowed from Melina to add a little bit more variety because we were shooting in some of the same areas. So from Fuchs family farm specifically, we only had one day where we actually had the opportunity to be there. So I had taken more photos and she had taken more B-roll, and I still used my own footage, but I took some of her photo or some of her video to supplement that. And then Kirk helped us out on the day that I was ill, unfortunately. And so the original interview with Fook, which there are some clips of that in here, is from Kirk and Melina. But the rest of it is from mine, and then Melina largely generated her own content for her story. So we were there shooting in the same location, but focusing on different angles and thus creating our own content for the most part. But I know some other groups took an approach where they would tackle 2 different areas in the same day and then share some of their content between each other.
It's a little too tall for me. I'm 5'2" too. Hey, is this the last group? I guess I don't have a question for you guys, but more for the audience, because you already see like the crisis right now happening in the Mekong Delta, and like some of the solution, like they have the sustainable tourism and stuff. Do you wondering about the reason, like why it's leading to the crisis right now? Why is it happening like that? Any idea?
It's similar to what's happening in a lot of different areas of the world, right? With
Yes.
industrialization and how do you, I guess, protect the land while still growing
Yes.
industrially.
Yes. Yeah. That's one part of it. Yes. It's also like well, I'm from Vietnam. I'm particularly from the south of Vietnam, helping the group of students with the interpretation and translation part of it. I know I just feel like I have an urge to explain my country. So imagine the whole Vietnam area is about 122,000 miles square, a little bigger than United States, than Nebraska. Nebraska like 78,000 ish. But we have almost 100 million people. That's a lot of people compared to here we have about 2 millions, right? So the density is very high. The more people you have, the more trash you have, the more air pollution you have, and everything. If you've been there, you will see actually there's a lot of effort besides like Ababina and all kinds of things to try to fix the environment. It'll be interesting if you know that we get paid there to recycle. So not like we have to pay here to recycle, but there, if I don't know, use a can of coconut something, people will come to my house, pick that up and pay me. Not much, but enough for like kids when I was small to like get snack and stuff, ice cream. We don't use a lot of like one-time things. How you call it? Yes, yeah, disposable stuff. Yeah, so there's a lot of effort. It's just also one more interesting fact is Vietnam is one of the country that get a lot of trash from big country. One of them is the United States, import to them every year. So actually, if you look into the reason of it and stop it, like you said, it's thing that happen all around the world. But also that things that happen in other area of the world affect smaller country, because smaller country is actually get like trash imported to them, and they don't have the capacity. But that's one way of the industrialization work. Here we actually create more trash, but we don't keep it here. We ship it outside of the country, so we're able to enjoy a better environment and fresh air. Just some notes, I think, for information. Yeah. So thank you.
Okay, yes, we were so lucky to have your viewpoint before and after we got back from the trip. So, all right, so Ariana and I have some closing remarks. Oh, before that, I was reminded to talk about some of the things that we're wearing today. So, a lot of us have these lovely little plaid linen scarves. We got that from one of the places that we stayed when we were leaving. They gave us these scarves. And then they also gave us like some jewelry and things like that. So a lot of the things that we're wearing we got from there. That was a big theme in Vietnam, was the generosity. So
Yeah, that's definitely something that is engraved in their traditions and their culture. No matter where we went, they, even young, old, no matter who the people were, they were very generous. Even if we had only exchanged a few words and didn't have a translator, within the entire country, we fully thought that we were accepted as not tourists but family, which was really nice. And especially as journalists, we can't act like tourists. Most of the stuff that we were doing, we were not going in as tourists, even though we might have been going on some tours like the tourists, where we were going in and actually trying to dissect these people's lives and see what they were getting and how they were effectively getting their lives to be where they are now. So yeah.
Okay, so we have some thanks, and some of them you would have already heard from our lovely Professor Chris Graves, but we're going to remind you of them because they're really important. So speaking of generosity, we could not have done this without the help from our Vietnamese partners, Thuy Phan and Dang Huynh with the Global Engagement Institute.
Yeah. We also want to give thanks to the professors and students at at Ken Tai University that welcomed not only us but our professors and our translators into their classrooms and allowed them to basically teach us what they do on a daily basis. That's not something that normally happens on their day-to-day, and I felt like we were kind of like this small piece of their life, and I think most of the students there could say that they created friends for life, which is pretty cool. And then I also wanted to thank Anna Reed, who came and talked to our students and gave critical feedback throughout the last 2 semesters. She is a photographer currently and also was an alum of this program, so she has continually been a pillar for us to be able to go back to and see how she would have done something in our footsteps, because she was in our footsteps.
Also, Lindsay Dario is a photographer and reporter who was visiting the campus and met with us during her brief stay to speak about her own accounts working on international stories, so that was really valuable.
We would also like to thank the Asian Community Center, who actually, we had a representative here who just came up and talked to us, who not only helped us with translation, but also allowed other students to come into our classroom and talk about some of the things we might expect before going to Vietnam. We would also like to thank the Global Engagement Institute in Ho Chi Minh City that also provided a lot of translations on the ground.
And then a really big shout out to our equipment checkout room director, Susan Ostman, who's in the back of the audience. She provided us with, we thank you for providing us with, trusting us with, and helping us use the college's equipment. You helped us prepare to travel with equipment, because it is no easy feat, as you might guess, to travel with that much equipment halfway around the world. So,
we also want to thank Professors Casey Richter, Chris Graves, Jill Martin, Christian Anderson, Sean Hill, and Alan Eno for providing feedback for students in the program.
And then lastly, we would like to thank the Buffett Fund for generously providing funding for the trip, the Global Eyewitness alumni who believed in us, this work, and then the ongoing mission to be courageous, compassionate, and humble with each other, and especially those who trust us with their stories to tell.
With that being said, this is the end of the exhibition. Articles, documentaries, and photos could be found in the Global Eyewitness tab of the Nebraska News Service website. Thank you. Thank you. Free feel to mingle and stuff. You guys don't need to leave right away.